Every one of us who lives with our parents has an occasional fight or disagreement with them, but most of those fights don't end up as full-blown brawls. However, that's not the case in anime, since sometimes fathers and sons have less than ideal relationships. There's a whole lot of drama that comes with that and a whole lot of emotion too. So without further ado, here's a list of the best father and son fights of all time to satisfy your urge for family drama and awesome fights. From the fiery pits of hell, we have Rin versus Satan. Sometimes your adoptive father is just better than your actual father, especially when your actual father is Satan himself. Now, when your father kills off your adoptive father, things can get pretty dicey. During this confrontation, Satan took control of Rin's brother Yukio, and it resulted in a gorgeously executed fight. Satan was shown to be extremely powerful during the entire exchange and one-sidedly beat up Rin for the majority of the fight while he tried to get through to his controlled brother. Eventually, Yukio regains control and the two brothers ruin their evil father's plans. The pacing of the fight is really good and the emotions attached to it just make it all the better. The visuals are stunning and you can see a lot of effort went into the animation. Overall, it's just a really solid fight that made the Blue Exorcist series even better. Up next, we have Guel Jeturk against his father Vim Jeturk from the Gundam Witch from Mercury series. Now, this one totally caught me off guard, and honestly, it's a very heart-wrenching moment from the series. During the attack on planet Keter, in a cruel twist of fate, Guel ends up being attacked by his father while he's using a mobile suit he found. The visuals are very appealing because who doesn't like giant robots fighting in space using all sorts of cool technology? The animation is smooth and the fight is well thought out. The real highlight of the fight, though, is that neither of the parties knew who the other was. The father and son unknowingly fought, and only when Guel landed the final blow did the two find out. It's an utterly tragic moment as Guel tries to get out to save his father, but the mobile suit blows up. No one expected it to happen, and imagine killing your own father. Even if you guys had bad blood, that's gotta hurt. Next, we have Rudeus versus Paul. Another long-awaited reunion like the previous entry, but gladly, this one doesn't end in tragedy. After the Mana disaster incident, Rudeus was taken away from his family for a very long time and only happened to reunite with his father after he went after the culprits of a kidnapping. Rudeus was in disguise, or more specifically, he's using panties as a mask, while Paul was in a completely different state as to what Rudeus remembered, or more specifically again, drunk and depressed. The two ended up fighting when they met, and Rudeus had to deal with his relatively powerful father. The fight was very well choreographed and Paul's beast-like movements looked great. It was also great watching Rudeus progress to the point where he could finally beat his father, but that wasn't until Paul managed to come close and launched an attack, which luckily only hit his mask. Well, Paul was drunk too, but the result would probably have been the same, even if he wasn't. Overall, the fight was really good, and Paul stopping when he realizes who he's fighting was also a very sweet moment. It was both emotional and action-packed. Next up on this list is Silver vs. Grey Fullbuster from Fairy Tail. So moving back to less than happy reunions, this father and son fight happens when the son finds out that his father was a demon named Deliora who killed people important to him. It's definitely a dark premise, but one that results in a rage-filled fight scene. The fight is pretty interesting to watch as you root for Grey to beat up his father. Grey showed how strong and smart he is when he turned Silver into a donut. Also, who doesn't enjoy the drama in these sorts of fights? In the end, it turns out that Silver wasn't entirely bad, as he's revealed not to be the demon who caused all the trouble for Grey. The two have an emotional moment before Silver passes away. It was similar to what happened to Guel, but this time he knew it was his father he was fighting. Biting their way into the list, we have a battle between vampires. It's Alucard versus Dracula in Castlevania. Now that's extremely cool in itself, but a father-son vampire fight with the legendary Dracula? It's on a whole other level, isn't it? The corrupted Dracula needs to be stopped from destroying all of mankind by his son, who's teamed up with a drunkard from a legendary family of vampire hunters and a strong female mage. Others aside, the fight between Dracula and Alucard is really awesome. Castlevania has had great animation, and this fight scene certainly encompasses it. The two fight all around the castle and create a lot of wreckage with Dracula's power clearly on display. Even though Alucard is powerful in every right, his father still beats him all over the place. It isn't until Dracula hits Alucard in his childhood room that he realizes that he's killing his own son. It's a wonderfully emotional moment as the Count of Darkness stops and realizes just how far he's gone. That's when Alucard finally lands the finishing blow, killing his father. Uryu versus Ryuken is next, a battle between Quincy's. The final arc of Bleach has some really cool animation, but this fight happened much earlier when the animation was just okay, not super polished, but it doesn't mean it wasn't good. Anyway, the fight happened right after Uryu's battle with Menos Grande. He was having a pretty hard time with it until Ryuken showed up and absolutely pulverized it before telling Uryu he could restore his powers if he was no longer associated with the Shinigami. Afterwards, Ryuken messes up with Uryu during training before revealing that it was a requirement to give him back his powers. It's not so much a fight really, but more of a one-sided slaughter. But that's to be expected, since most fathers tend to be stronger than their sons. Well, initially at least. Even so, the fight was fun to watch, and the soundtrack was an absolute banger. Now we have an oldie, but a goldie, and it's Yomi versus Shura from Yu Yu Hakusho. Not all fathers are evil, sometimes they just beat you up for training purposes. Also, it's a weird father-son relationship since Shura is basically Yomi's clone of himself. This father-son fight occurred during the Demon World Tournament. Now, Yomi is one of the 3 Demon Kings and it's so obvious who the winner of the fight is going to be. The animation is really pleasant to the eyes, even though it's very old. It has great choreography and the fist fights look gorgeous, much like the fights in Dragon Ball Z actually. Shura gives it his all, but Yomi is just too strong in every way. He even goes for a cheap shot by blasting Yomi in the face, but it has zero effect on him. Well, the only effect is that he proceeds to beat up Shura a bit more before finally being declared the victor. Now, if that ain't father and son bonding, then I don't know what is. Moving on, we have a fight scene from another of the big 3 anime, Naruto. This fight is against Gaara and his father Rasa. Now, the two of them are very accomplished fighters, which is clear since they both have the title of Kazekage, Gaara being the current one while his father was the previous one. Both of them have similar jutsu as well, so it's already the setup of an amazing fight. However, the funniest and perhaps saddest part by far is how surprised Rasa is when he finds out that Gaara has friends. He'd been an awful father, so it's satisfying that the two duke it out. Gold dust Rasa uses is a wonderful contrast to Gaara's, and overall, the entire fight has more emotions than actual fighting. At least Gaara finally learned the truth and got to listen to something of an apology from his father. Coming up next is from Ranking of Kings, the fight between Boji and Boss. Talking about Boji, he's also the Crown Prince. He's got a sad backstory as he had a curse placed on him when he was born because his father Boss bargained with a demon to get his firstborn child's strength and power. It's great that the studio chose to animate the fight with Boss in his giant form, even though in actuality he was fighting in Daida's body. This David versus Goliath-like fight was beautifully emotional and it had some really charming animation. It was also particularly satisfying to see how Boji had developed over the course of the anime to the point where he defeated his own father. Perhaps the highlight of these fights is actually watching the son surpass the father. But we won't get too philosophical yet, because next up we have Gamui versus Umibos from Gintama. Umibos is considered amongst the highest elite of the Yato, with his fighting strength considered almost equal to the king of Yato. Other than Hosen, the only person able to contend with him is his own son, Gamui. The father-son duo isn't on the best of terms, which is apparent since Gamui had once cut off his father's arm. Now, this fight simply continued at this point when Gamui and Umibos fought again in a no-holds-barred match. The entire fight is sufficiently brutal and chaotic, with both sides going all out to defeat the other. The fight has some nice choreography and good visuals, especially for the time of the episode's release, and makes for a very enjoyable, serious fight in an otherwise comedic anime. Gintama may be known for being really funny, but when it wants to add emotions, it hits like a truck. Of course, we can't forget to add the fight between Goku and Gohan. This fight took place in Dragon Ball Super, right before the Tournament of Power. Goku, as we all know from the Cell Saga, is very keen on testing out his son, so the match took place in an attempt to determine whether Gohan could participate in the Tournament of Power to represent Universe 7. Gohan initially throws Goku around, telling him to use all his power. This then prompts Goku to go Super Saiyan Blue and officially end the fight on a high note. Fight is short but pretty fulfilling, showing how Gohan has become powerful enough to take on Goku in one of his most powerful forms. He still isn't as strong as our battle-crazed father, but he's definitely amongst the strongest in the universe. Coming in at number 3 is a fight from the last of the big 3 of shonen anime, One Piece. Sanji, the main cook of the team and one of its strongest members, has always been a very important part of the team. However, his childhood had been shrouded in mystery for a very long time until it was revealed that he was technically a prince, having been born to Vinsmoke Judge, the king of the German kingdom. Although royalty wasn't all it's cracked up to be, since Sanji was ridiculed and abused during his childhood because he was defective when compared to his other siblings. Seeing that Sanji had such an abusive childhood, it was super satisfying to watch him fight his less than ideal father. During the entirety of the brawl, Judge made use of his many modifications and initially had the upper hand, but Sanji reached his limit when Judge used one of his men as a human shield before attacking Sanji and defeating him. Not as satisfying as watching Sanji beat up his abusive father, but it was fine since he didn't seem to be going all out. Next on this list, we have Seito Kaiba versus Gozaburo Kaiba from Yu-Gi-Oh! Although Gozaburo is Seito's adoptive father, it still counts since he played the same role. Not the best father, of course, which is obvious since the two ended up clashing after Seito orders his father to shut down Domino City and release all the minds trapped in the virtual world. The Yu-Gi-Oh! Duels make a literal card game look pretty awesome. Seeing huge monsters summoned in a game of wits is so much fun to watch, even though the anime is pretty old, so the animation isn't as great as the other anime on this list. Still, the monster designs are very cool. The two talk a lot during the fight, fight scene, there are quite a lot of rules in play, but the anime does a good job of making the fight look interesting and keeping the viewers up to date with what's happening. Other than the relatively less flashy fights, it's always fun watching a blue-eyed dragon beat what is basically an Egyptian god. And the family drama is there too, so it does make the cut for this list. Moving on, we have the most recent fight during the making of this list, Megumi vs Toji. Now, for fans of this series, this was an amazing moment, especially since Toji was killed way before in a fight with Gojo, and we thought we wouldn't see him again. Fortunately though, curses work in mysterious ways, and the Shibuya incident allowed us to see the father and son meet up once again, but not in the best of settings. Mainly because neither of the two knew they were related. The entire fight happens in an instant as Toji appears to blitz Megumi. Now, this Toji was basically a reanimation by Granny Ogami, but it's still a reunion of sorts. The fight itself was just spectacular. Everything was so on point during the entire fight. The visuals were amazing, the choreography was breathtaking, and it was even a bit emotional for fans. But it was only the fans though, since till the end, Megumi had no idea who he'd fought. Toji would have killed Megumi too if not for a certain memory that arose in him. When Toji realizes he's his son, Toji proceeds to stab himself in the head to prevent himself from causing his son more harm. And last on the list is Baki Hanma versus his father, Yujiro. Father and son fights are normally side stories in anime and not the primary driving force behind the hero. However, that's not the case here, since the reason why Baki trains so hard is solely to defeat his father, the ogre, Yujiro Hanma. Baki's entire goal is to become stronger than his father and avenge his mother, who was killed by him. No easy feat either, since Yujiro is considered the strongest creature in the world. Baki has had some ridiculously outrageous fights, and the charm of the anime comes from them. So it's no surprise that the fight between these two warriors is equally epic and wild. The animation is something you get used to and appreciate. The choreography and visuals are great, while at the same time the emotions are just spot on too. It does seem one-sided at first with Yujiro dominating Baki, but the latter matches up to his father soon after and puts up a really good fight. However, in the end, Baki technically loses, but Yujiro still acknowledges his son, saying that he's the strongest creature on Earth. Considering the long fight, feelings, and how this becomes the climax of the series, this one was definitely the best father and son fight in anime.
しびれ続ける拳のみが父と我が身をつなぐ唯一の絆。打ってるのか、俺は。
And with that, we're wrapping up this list of the top father and son fights of all time. Even with all the research, there are probably many other fights that you think would be a good fit for this list, so don't be shy and make sure to let us know down in the comments. Now, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want more of this family drama with awesome fights. See you next time.